Bandidos, what up? Today we're diving into some big news for The Division 2 that's got the community buzzing. The devs just dropped a teaser trailer for the new DLC called Battle for Brooklyn, set to hit sometime later in 2025. And they also told us to mark our calendars for April 23rd, 2025, when they'll spill more details. So let's break down everything you need to know about this DLC. We're gonna keep it real and figure out why this might be worth your time or why you might want to hold off. Stick around because this might be the game changer for The Division 2. Let's find out why.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're cool.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
First up, the setting. We're heading back to Brooklyn, New York, which might ring a bell if you played The Division 1. It was the tutorial zone back then. But before you roll your eyes thinking it's just recycled content, the devs are promising all new zones and missions. So we're talking fresh streets to explore, new spots to shoot it out, and a different vibe from what we've seen before. The teaser showed off an autumn look. Falling leaves, pumpkins, that whole seasonal deal, which sets the tone. There was also a quick shot of some compound, like an oil refinery, that's probably tied to a big mission. And oh yeah, it wouldn't be New York without them cleaners. The Division loves to catch agents on fire. So I guess look forward to more of that. What's this DLC actually about? Well, the devs are pitching it as story focused. So if you're into the Division 2's lore, this is probably going to dig into some deep narrative stuff. It picks up after the main game and whatever's been going down in year 6, so expect it to tie into the bigger picture. Maybe we'll meet new characters, figure out what's going on with Sokolova, run into some fresh factions, or get hit with a plot twist that shakes things up. For the story crowd, that all sounds like a win. But let's not kid ourselves. Story focus doesn't always mean a ton of new gameplay. It might lean more cinematic, with fewer side gigs or collectibles to chase. So if you're hoping for a giant new sandbox to mess around in, don't get your hopes up too high just yet. Speaking of gameplay, what's actually on the table? Well, new main missions and open world zones are pretty much a lock based on what we're hearing. Could be some new gear or weapons too, but likely just stuff that would come with a seasonal drop. Otherwise, don't expect a total game overhaul. This isn't a Warlords of New York sized expansion. It's more of a focus drop. So it'll keep you busy with new challenges, maybe some unique mechanics, and if Ubisoft does it the Ubisoft way, a lot of task lists to grind through. So it's likely not going to rewrite the rulebook. Still, fresh content is fresh content, and that's something to chew on. That's something this community is looking forward to chewing on. Long time coming. All right, let's talk cash, because that's where it gets real. Is this going to be free or what? Well, Ubisoft's keeping it quiet for now, but if we're going off past moves, it's probably not free. Warlords of New York was $29.99 back in 2020, and with prices creeping up, we're likely looking at $35 or $40 here. Worth it? Well, that depends. If you're hooked on the franchise, it's probably an easy buy because you've been looking forward to some new content for like ever. It's been over a year since we've gotten any new content. That was Paradise Lost, The Incursion. So if you're expecting a massive new playground or groundbreaking mechanics, maybe wait for that April 23rd reveal before you decide. We'll know more then. What's the community saying? Well, people are pumped. New content always gets the blood flowing, especially with Brooklyn's history in the franchise. But there's a flip side. Ubisoft's dropped the ball before. Communication's been shaky and bugs tend to stick around like uninvited guests. Some folks are ready to dive in and support the game, while others are hanging back because they're sort of sick of the dev shit. And there's no shame in that. Kick back, wait for the reviews. You don't have to jump in on day one. Some of you might want to wait to see if Ubisoft sticks the landing, especially with their track record on launches. Totally get that. But the whole point here is to make sure you don't sleep on what might potentially be The Division 2's return. If the devs stick this landing, jumping in early could set you up nice for the grind ahead. Oh, and here's a bonus thought. This DLC might be a stepping stone to The Division 3. Ubisoft's already confirmed the next game's in the works. Probably 2028 or later, and Battle for Brooklyn could set up some big story beats or characters that carry over. If you're in for the long haul, this might be a piece of the puzzle you don't want to miss. But the big question is, why the delay to later in 2025? I mean, wasn't this thing announced way back in 2022? Well, Assassin's Creed Shadows drops on March 20th, 2025, and Ubisoft probably didn't want two heavy hitters stepping on each other's toes, because a lot of the Division 2 players also play Assassin's Creed, so staggering their releases keeps the spotlight clear. Smart business, even if it means we're twiddling our thumbs just a little bit longer. All right, but let's take a step back and look at what's happening in the gaming world these days. There's this big wave of nostalgia sweeping through where players are flocking back to older games and publishers are cashing in by remastering their classic titles. You know, games like The Last of Us Part 1 on PS5 or the Resident Evil remakes. These aren't just any games. These are the ones that defined a generation, and now they're getting a fresh coat of paint to look and feel better on modern hardware. Why is this happening? Well, for one, the audience that grew up with these games is now older and has more money to spend. They want to recapture that magic from their youth, and for younger players, these games are like a piece of history that they want to experience for themselves. According to industry reports, the market for video game remasters was valued at around $1.5 billion in 2023, and it's expected to grow further. That's a lot of money being spent on revisiting old games, and it shows there's a strong demand for this kind of content. Now, the Division franchise fits right into this. The first game came out in 2016, which is almost 10 years ago now. That's a pretty significant chunk of time in the gaming industry. So there's probably a bunch of people who played it back then and are now thinking, hey, I remember that game. Maybe I should check it out again. But here's the thing. The Division 2 is the current iteration, and it's still getting new content, like the Battle for Brooklyn DLC. So if someone is feeling nostalgic for the Division 1, they might be more likely to jump into the Division 2 to see what's new and improved, especially with the game being so cheap. But I know someone out there is probably thinking, hey, survival mode in the Division 1. Yeah, I get it. Plus, even if they haven't played the Division 1, the franchise has built up a reputation over the years. Now, let's zoom out for a sec and talk franchise success, because the Division series isn't some small-time gig. The first game pulled in over $330 million in its launch week alone. That was back in 2016. And by its second anniversary, it hit $1.2 billion in retail sales with over 20 million players jumping in. That's serious cash and a huge crowd. And the Division 2's been keeping the torch lit since 2019. Ubisoft's made bank on this franchise, and it's why they're still pumping out stuff like this DLC. It's a moneymaker and a fan favorite that's kept folks coming back for almost a decade. So new players who are looking for a solid, established game might be drawn to the Division 2 because of its history and positive buzz around it. This trend of revisiting older games isn't just about playing the exact same thing again. It's about experiencing something that's been refined and expanded upon. And that's exactly what the Division 2 offers. It's the sequel that built on the first game's foundation, adding new features and improving upon the original. So with Battle for Brooklyn, it's like another layer of that. New content for an already beloved game, keeping it fresh and exciting. I think this nostalgia trend is going to be a big driver for the Division franchise's growth. As more people look back at older games and appreciate their value, they're going to be more likely to invest time and money into series like the Division that have stood the test of time. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that the Division 1 needs a remaster or anything like that. You could look at the Division Resurgence mobile game as something sort of like a remaster, although who knows, maybe a console remaster is in the works. But even without that, the franchise as a whole benefits from this nostalgia wave because it's an established name with a loyal following. So if you're a fan or thinking about getting into it, now might be a great time to dive in or dive back in, especially with the new DLC on the horizon. From where I stand, this nostalgia trend is a great thing for games like The Division 2 and its new DLC. It keeps the community engaged and attracts new players who might not have given it a shot otherwise. If you've been looking to get into the game or have been away for a while and looking to come back, you need to be aware of Ubisoft's financial situation and how the devs manage the community. So we're clear, we're lucky to hear from them once every 4 months outside of maintenance advisories. Bugs persist so long, they basically become features. The dev team is small and budgets don't allow for community-driven development or any real feedback loops. Ubisoft itself is in financial crisis and could sell to Tencent or even sell the franchise entirely. Is the game worth playing? Yes, as long as you know what you're getting into and can tolerate development processes like this. Here's a quick look at how many folks are still playing The Division 2 because that tells us something about the game's health. According to Steam charts, the game's been holding steady with around 4,000 to 5,000 concurrent players on Steam lately. That's double what I saw last season. Just a couple of days ago on March 10th, it peaked at 5,300 players, though it dipped a bit since then, down about 22% day over day. That's just Steam, mind you, so across all platforms like PlayStation and Xbox, we're probably talking tens of thousands logging in daily. It's not breaking records, but it's a solid crew still running missions and keeping the streets alive. Shows there's life in this game yet, and Battle for Brooklyn could pull even more people back in. So this is what you need to do. Keep an eye out for more details on April 23rd, 2025, and then decide for yourself on whether it's time to get back into the Division 2. But I gotta say, it's worth considering jumping in. So what do you think? Hyped to jump in or holding off for more? Let me know in the comments and let's keep the conversation going. Catch you next time.
Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Tuxedo Bandido, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on the good stuff I have coming for you. And if you like content like this, be sure to check out the video I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you would like me to cover, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make things possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be the same without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Wait, did we just become best friends?